Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips Buck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources, joined today by our president, Matt Boisvert. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Rachel.
How's it going?
How's it going?
Well, let's see. Given the fact that 9 minutes ago, I poured a gigantic cup of coffee all over the kitchen. I didn't really pour it. I kind of smacked it in your direction, and you had to run backwards to avoid it.
I still have some cat-like reflexes, so.
Yeah. So other than that, it's going pretty well. You were kind enough to make me some more coffee, and here we are. It is November, which is pretty exciting, although you wouldn't know it because it is 85 degrees today in Texas. What?
75. It's just hot.
It's like
still
80.
Hot.
It's very hot.
Okay. Yeah.
So, so we continue with our froggy allergic voices. Sorry, guys.
Well, I'm sad because a week ago, last Monday, we were in Portland. And so being at the CIC Chief Academic Officers annual, I guess the Institute for Chief Academic Officers in Portland, Oregon was awesome. That felt like fall, and I got to eat
peak
food.
Fall. Yeah, it was peak fall. Everything was red and orange and yellow, and there were mountains, and there was the ocean, and there were oysters. So it's very hard to compete with that.
Just seafood. I do miss, there's a lot that I miss from the Pacific Northwest, and so it was nice to be up there.
But it was so much fun. We got to see a lot of clients, spend time with a lot of people. We were there with Callie and Shauna, which was always nice to be with our colleagues who we don't get to see all the time. So it was a very good time, much different than
where we are now
outside the window. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, listen, we've got to get serious about our theme for 2025 because we're at the tail end of the year. Our theme has been curiosity.
Yeah.
You and I have been very vulnerable in telling people what we search for in our Google searches every week. So they have a much better understanding of our crazy town brains. But before we delve into that, will you please give us some facts out of your National Geographic book?
Yeah. So this is the brain candy book that I've been covering for all this time. Okay, last time I did dogs. This time I'm going to do cats, and I've got a little bonus one if you want to hear it.
Okay.
Cats are super sensitive. Okay, their ears can rotate 180 degrees, so they're very good listeners.
Okay.
Right, like it can face backward.
Turn around. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They have whiskers. Listen to this. They have whiskers on their elbows.
Oh.
That pick up vibration and breezes.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. Last time you made fun of dogs, but I don't.
Your facts. Okay. I mean, it's not your fault. National Geographic's facts about dogs last time were questionable.
All right. If you didn't know this, cats sweat through their paws. That's just, yeah. And we can see. They can see 8 times better in the dark than humans can.
Wow. That's
wow.
Now, what is that? I think it's true about cats that their whiskers tell them the hole they can fit through. Have you heard that before?
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's like their whiskers are however long they are. If their whiskers can get through, then that means their whole body can get through. Well, that's helpful.
I wonder how cats just know that. Okay, but this is an extra little fact because this is a page as we're winding down my little curiosity book we're not going to get to. Domestic cats can wander as far as 1.9 miles, 3 kilometers from home.
What does that mean? They can
wander? One study found they can.
What happens if they go further?
Well, it's just like how far your cat is likely to go roam, right?
Oh, okay.
All right, fine. There you go.
I was thinking about Homeward Bound, and that cat was way further than 1.9 miles from their house. So that's where I got confused. But I understand what you're saying. Like that they've claimed their territory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to do your Google searches for us?
Sure. Yeah. So this was interesting week for me as it's like, well, what is the source of my Google searches? Was I on my phone the most? Was I on my computer doing the Google searches? Right. So there's a lot of election searches that happen on my computer where I'm trying to figure out like what's going on, particularly in Arizona where I lived for a while. I'm just like, are they done counting? But I'm just going to go through my other top 5. One was alpha screws for a Container Store shelf unit.
Sounds
I needed
like
to know.
Had to do some work.
Had a little project.
Weekend.
Number 2, and if you haven't seen this, you should Google it. Star Wars painting scene. I was trying to tell my youngest daughter about like for Star Wars, like Empire Strikes Back, there literally was an artist painting the scenes on like a glass board. You're phenomenal.
Saying instead of like CGI, that was all for real. Yeah.
An incredibly talented. Number 3, I love this one. You know that I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan and they are terrible, but I actually looked up, I was texting with my sister, Micah Parsons running back, and he actually had some running back plays in the Z, we don't need that.
I don't know why you're bringing up football. My team's doing terrible. Z's team beat your team. So
but the idea of Micah Parsons as a running back is funny, and lo and behold, he actually ran some plays that way. Number 4, this made me tear up.
Oh.
Jelly Roll inmates. That was my search because I had heard about Jelly Roll did a concert. Are you with me?
Yeah, yes.
Jelly Roll did a concert in which he brought on stage like 4 inmates from a prison that he had just visited, and he had asked for permission for these guys who had put together a band in prison. He asked the sheriff if he could have them on stage with him, and they sang one of his new songs called Unpretty, and it is powerful.
Cool.
I don't know.
Google it.
All right. And last was On the Loose Cruise, which
we just watched
we just heard about.
There was an accident in, where was it?
Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Oshkosh, yeah. On the Loose Cruise. Loose Cruise.
Yeah. There's my 5.
All right. Well, my 5 are City Slickers Cast, because I just watched this with my family, and you may not know that the little boy is Jake Gyllenhaal. I was like, that's Jake Gyllenhaal. And I looked it up, and sure enough, it's like a 7-year-old Jake Gyllenhaal.
Wow.
Number 2, Dirty Soda, which is soda that has syrup and cream in it. You can go to Sonic and order a Dirty Dr. Pepper, and they put like vanilla syrup in it, and then they put cream on top of it. I don't really understand it, but we have a store in Abilene that sells it. And I was like, I'm confused.
Okay.
While we were in Portland, we were driving to one of our schools, George Fox, and we drove through this field of crop that was flaming bright red. And so I Googled, what is this crop? And it's crimson clover. It's gorgeous. I've never heard of it before, but it's shocking. I also Googled fennel and bok choy because I was doing a cooking lesson with a chef last night. And I was telling Matt that I had my groceries delivered, and instead of them delivering me fennel, they delivered me bok choy, which is a terrible substitute. And he was like, what's the difference? And I was like, here's what they both look like. So fennel and bok choy. And then lastly, I was Googling the movie Candyman because there is a podcast about the real situation behind the Candyman movie, which is all about Cabrini Green in Chicago, which is a project where the medicine cabinets actually came out of the wall. And so there were, look what I did.
What are you doing?
There was actually like burglaries and a murder because of the way they designed these medicine cabinets. So I was looking that up. So it's a great podcast. I did just watch.
That was super distracting. What did you just hold your hands up and that happened?
I think it's 2 thumbs up. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, that takes us to the State of the Union. I'm never one to, I like celebrating, so it's good when I can give myself a thumbs up. Okay, Matt. So we have had an election. You alluded to this. There are two articles that I want to cover. I think they're worth reading, but I just want to give sort of things are very different than they were last time we were all together. So there's an article out of educationnext.org, which is called What's Ahead for Colleges. And it basically goes through some of the things people are concerned about with the new president in office and some, the House and Senate and all of that. So I just want to go through these really briefly. I think it's worth a read. But there's a lot of conversation about Trump saying the U.S. Department of Education is going to be abolished. Remember, the Republicans have wanted to do this for 45 years. So ever since the Department of Education came about, there's been a lot of question marks about it and people being unsure about it. Remember that the Republicans had the trifecta during Trump's first 2 years in office, and he had promised to abolish the education department, and he did not do it. So this article is like, Republicans will need 60 votes in the Senate. They only have 53 seats. So it is highly unlikely that that's going to be abolished just based on the balance of power. There may be some efforts to trim it, but that's probably going to stay intact. One of the things that this administration is talking about is outsourcing the loans to the treasurer. So taking that out of the education department, putting it over in the treasury, because they deal with money. So that may be something that they could do. But in general, this article is like, it's an overreaction. I don't think you need to worry about the Department of Education being abolished. Anything you want to say about that?
No, I'm sorry. My internet cut out. And so I missed kind of the end of that. But I do think that we're just kind of in a wait and see. There's just a whole lot of pitching right now.
Yeah.
And I think part of the question is like, what really sticks?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Like you said, I mean, there's a lot of obstacles to doing major pendulum swings.
So I have another article specifically around what would happen if that education department was abolished. So I'm going to put that up on the screen for you. But let me talk about some other things that people are talking about here. There's an assumption that the Trump administration 2.0 is going to have trouble staffing up because of his relationship with the GOP. This article basically says, hey, probably the opposite is going to be closer to the truth. Things are very different than his first state in office. And so they're going to have a 53 seat Senate majority, which is probably going to make confirmations much easier. So probably he's not going to have that much of a hard time. We're not going to have vacancies for very long, which we're already seeing he's filling his cabinet. And then the last one is that college presidents should be nervous that their lives are about to get a lot more stressful. And this article says, yes, that is true. It is true. More stressful. Yeah. So you just think about all of the stuff with DEI, everything about accreditation, boosting taxes on endowments. It's just a very hard job to be a college president. And it's just continuing to get more and more complex, more and more difficult. That's not even talking about admissions, right? What's happened with FAFSA, everything with our enrollment cliff. It's just a very hard job.
When I think about your conversation today with Dr. Woosley, it's going to be so important to make this move from danger brain to daring brain on your campuses in a very complex environment, right? So I think being thoughtful about that as you all talk about this, and just applying it to really the climate right now.
Yeah. Also, in celebration of Veterans Day, which was yesterday, there's a great article Inside Higher Ed about how how higher ed can inspire belonging in student veterans. So really interesting. Previous research shows that veterans who take advantage of the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is the bill that provides grants for veterans who served after September 10th, 2001, for the full cost of public institutions in the state they reside, they have higher completion rates compared to financially independent students nationally, and earn more than those without a credential. So it's really, really powerful for our veterans to take advantage of that. And this article actually goes through and highlights 5 or 6 different schools who have really invested in veteran care. Mostly what they're highlighting is things like veteran lounges. So you and I have talked about this with commuter students, but
Yeah.
this is like a place for veterans to come where they have a kitchen and they have a place where they can relax, and it's free of distractions, and they have space for their service animals if they have them. Basically just a place for them to have a home base, because oftentimes they are commuters, and so just a little bit more specialized. So if you have a large veteran population, which Matt, you were telling me, what is the national veteran population of our college students?
Yeah. It's 1 out of every 30 students is a student veteran.
So interesting to think about that population on your campus. Just making it more transparent for our faculty to know who our students are on campus. One of the things they suggest is having a map where you have like scratch off where people can say, here's where I've been deployed, which is a great way to make that visible, but then also to have really great conversation around it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about, so in our conversations about commuter students, I always refer to the best airports in America in the ways that they cater to their best travelers, right? Or like, so the lounges.
Yeah.
But also you have the military lounges. So that makes sense to me. And actually, if you wanted to know, how can I, if you have a large veteran population, so we're familiar in our city, there's a Air Force base. And so when I was teaching, I always had an Air Force student in my class.
Yeah.
And so thinking about like, so what can I do? What can the university do? Best thing you could do is go look at how they're treated at places like, in our case, DFW Airport. What's the setup there where you can build camaraderie with those fellow student veterans?
Yeah. In a similar vein, there's a great article about how colleges can support second-year students. So I just want to call out of this. I mean, we've talked about this for a long time. Sophomore students can often be like, hey, where did everyone go? Right?
Sure.
Like, there was like such an investment in freshmen, and then we show up as sophomores and everyone's like, yeah, you're fine. We're not worried about you. But this article calls out like, hey, they have more major courses. So they have more challenging academic environments. They are now, hopefully, if you have done a good job, starting their career development journey. So they've picked their major, they did all their exploration, they are well in to their major, and they're thinking about collecting different experiences and internships that are going to set them up for success. Also, they have different financial circumstances. So they may not be living on campus, they may not have a meal plan anymore. So things like, how do you identify housing and manage your personal finances to pay rent or utility bills? All of those things are super important for students to have some guidance on. And then just remember that national data is showing that fewer students are completing their FAFSA after their first year despite being Pell eligible, which is going to impact retention and financial wellness. And also our sophomores in their first year, they're experiencing all these newfound confidences and freedom. So they're kind of showing up in college and figuring out who they're going to be. But then they have to come back as sophomores and experience their life sort of as their new selves, right? So that just continues to play out, whatever your group of friends, however you've kind of showed up as freshmen. So I think there's a lot of really particular targets that we could talk about with our sophomore students.
You know, I am seeing this right now with my current freshman daughter, who is already thinking about her sophomore year. And I'm like, first of all, I don't understand that, but it's actually a totally different experience for her because she's at a larger state school.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that she's having to think about, and so this autonomy, right? Because I'm like, hey, at this point, it is kind of up to you. I don't know.
Yeah,
you've got to figure that out. There's a lot. There's a lot there. Well, I do think for sophomores, it's interesting how the conversation changes with the sophomores, returning sophomores, where it's kind of taken for granted, right? Like the way that, so they don't have that continual touch point with admissions.
right.
Now with advising, it becomes very serious, but not sure that you have a really good connection there. The registrar or the business office, you start getting bossier communication. I think it would be really good for your institution to evaluate your communication with a sophomore, because I think things are a little different with sophomores right now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I have two more fun articles for you. One is, this is really amazing. A small but storied Manhattan college is embroiled in a contentious real estate battle focused on a much bigger New York icon, the Chrysler Building. So, the New York Times and other publications recently reported on a battle between the Cooper Union for Advancement of Science and Art, which is a private college that owns the ground beneath the Chrysler Building, and the two companies who bought the building in 2019, Cigna and RFR Holding. So the companies purchased the building's leasehold interest, and they agreed to pay Cooper Union to use the business building and sublease the offices, but they fell behind on their payments. In July, Cooper Union gave the owners a 30-day warning about missing payments, which totaled over $8.6 million plus interest. This is so interesting, Matt. So the way that this Cooper Union got this land was that it was founded in 1859 by Peter Cooper, who was an inventor and philanthropist who wanted this institute to educate the working class regardless of race or gender. Remember, 1859, so it's pretty incredible. Andrew Carnegie, I'm not sure how you say it, bought the land and gave it to them. So in 1902, he gave it to them. That was 27 years before the Chrysler Building was built. Now, though, since the pandemic, like the Chrysler Building has housed fewer and fewer tenants. It's really in a level of disrepair. The owners are supposed to be kind of fixing it up, but they're not actually doing that. And so it's going to be really interesting to see. The price on the ground lease has soared from $7.75 million in 2018 to $32.5 million today. The college's total operating budget for 2023 was over $147 million. So it's just like a very, very specific case where, because it's in Manhattan and it's land that's under the Chrysler Building, it's very, very valuable. Whereas for most of our schools, they're not going to see that kind of return on investment in their land, right? So, all right, the last one I have for you, you're going to be really happy about. This is Higher Ed Drive has the story of how one Pennsylvania college navigated the turbulent FAFSA season. I'm super impressed with Joseph Howard, the vice president for enrollment, Ed Widener. How do we decide you say it? Widener?
Yeah, I think that's right. Widener.
Yeah, a private nonprofit in Pennsylvania. So we know everything that's been happening with FAFSA. We've got a lot of stuff, right? We've got the first year students dropped enrollment compared to the year before, blah, blah, blah. You guys know all of that stuff. What I love about this is that the FAFSA filing rates among Widener domestic admitted student pool remained well above 70%, increasing the number of applications received by 5% over the prior year. They delivered more than 2,500 financial aid offers within a week of the education department's green light and enrolled their largest undergraduate class in its history. And Matt, I'm telling you, we have a couple of schools who have pulled this off. So where they're just like, we're going to do a really great job. We had a school the other day that's their enrollment is up 20% because they did such a good job. This article talks about what Joseph did. And the first thing that he did was he went to his faculty and his staff and he said, you guys, this FAFSA disruption is going to be one of the most consequential changes in higher education in decades. We better get it together and figure out what we're going to do about it. So because they did,
you must have been listening to you, Rachel. Like, right?
Surely.
We've been talking about. I mean, it was like, hey, y'all, FAFSA's changing. FAFSA's changing. They're going to release it. Nope, not on this date. Not on this date. Not on. No, they're behind. Hey, it's a real crisis now.
Yeah. So Joseph went to his faculty and academic leaders, and he's like, "You guys, we better figure out what to do because we're going to close if we don't do this well. Right? It's going to be devastating to us." So they reassessed the timing of their marquee events for admitted students. They talked to, when they found out the education department isn't going to meet its goal of January 31st, they, with 1 day notice, PS, they changed their May 1st decision deadline. They changed all of their timing from orientation to advising to registration to course selection. They changed their FAFSA solicitation efforts from transactional outreaches to one based on partnership. They understood like students and families are freaked out and they're super confused. So they're like, hey, us too, we're in this process together. Just walk alongside of us. I love this. They kept students informed amid abrupt changes, software bugs, and delays. In addition to their university webpage, they supplemented outreach with TikTok videos featuring their financial aid team. They sent postcards, text messages, emails, one-off outreaches. The median admitted student to this university received 28 discrete points of engagement from their specific staff around FAFSA filing.
What a great measure.
Yeah. So basically, they just were like, financial aid and admissions have to work together in partnership. Got to figure out what we're going to do. And then we've got to deliver this whole piece, which was really successful for them. So awesome job, you guys, starting with the transformational leadership of, hey, this is not a thing we can wait around and see what happens.
That's right. So I don't know, this is a really awesome model for all of our schools. FAFSA, hopefully that disaster won't happen again.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think you could take that and apply it to, registrations, so as we've worked with a lot of moving the needle schools with Credo, just knowing where are you with registration rate at this time in the semester and where you want to be compared to where you are, and being able to really all hands on deck in a lot of cases. Where faculty talk about it. Hey, make sure that you've met with your advisor. I don't know why we're not doing that. So
well, there's a lot. Like I said last time, we could do a whole show on how people have responded to FAFSA and what that looks like. So that is the State of the Union. Yeah. Really great story to just read through. So happy for you guys to look that one up as well. All right, Matt, I'm going to kick you out. I'm going to bring in Dr. Sherry Woosley.
Can I say hi to her first? Because she's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Dr. Woosley.
Did you notice Matt, I'm talking to you. Did you notice what our title was today that Bailey came up with?
I did. I love it. It's super appropriate. So I always love this day because there's a lot of wisdom that comes from you, Sherry. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Well, I love that phrase because my team has jokes about, for conferences, things we should do. Shots with Sherry was one that I nixed. So I like wisdom with Woosley much better. Thank you.
You're like, that one I can get behind.
Yeah.
I can do. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm super excited about our topic today. It's called From Danger to Daring.
I love this.
And I'm going to set the frame because this is, every year about this time, I start thinking about what do I want to talk about for the year? Because we do presentations with different schools and, I go to campuses, and this is what I have been thinking about. So I want to lay out sense of belonging cues, psychological sense of safety is how we're going to travel this journey today.
Okay.
And I want to start with sense of belonging. So again, we want to talk about moving from danger to daring, where you feel afraid to where you're willing to take risks is what we're trying to accomplish, particularly relevant as we're thinking about our freshmen, as we're thinking about our sophomores, right? All of that kind of stuff. Can you help us, Sherry? Because I feel like people talk about sense of belonging all the time. Everybody knows sense of belonging. And yeah, I get the sense that actually nobody has nailed that down super well, right? So can you introduce us to what are we talking about when we're saying sense of belonging for our students?
Well, and I have to tell you, I remember when the phrase first sort of hit the landscape, right?
Yeah.
The student success landscape, and everybody started talking about sense of belonging. And I had been sort of trained in way old Tinto and social integration. And I was like, wait, what's the difference between sense of belonging and social integration? And there's some great kinds of nuances between those two. So I get it. But if you want something more current on what is sense of belonging and how does it differ from all the other terms, I think one of the best is a book 2022, so relatively new. Aaron Bentram and Gavin Henning edited it. And it is the impact of a sense of belonging in college. So, I mean, this is just about students and sense of belonging. And one of the things that the book does, and particularly Terrence Strayhorn's chapter does, is he talks about the difference between engagement, involvement, and sense of belonging.
Ooh.
That to me was one of the first, like, where, and he's written about things like this before. Strayhorn's pretty amazing at this, but the way that he broke it down, and I don't think people necessarily use the three words in the way he broke it down, but I love the nuance of it. Is he talks about engagement as an engaged campus. Okay. So the campus creates these activities, these things that can help connect a student, whether it's tutoring sessions or informational, like conversational groups or whatever it is, that the engaged campus looks a certain way.
Okay.
Then he talks about involvement as being the commitment that students have. It's the time and energy they put into these activities. So, and I don't know if he's basing that out of like Aston's research, or theories or not of involvement, but it would make sense.
Yeah, for sure.
That's students' kind of commitment to those things. That's how they engage. So that's involvement. And then the way that Aaron Bentram and Gavin Henning talk about sense of belonging is that it's the outcome. It's the feeling and the perceptions that the student has that this environment is supportive of them. So the student feels like that there's a sense of belonging, that they fit, that they have the support that they need. It's the outcome.
So Sherry, it's so interesting, right? Because if we think of Aston, who has inputs, and then we have the black box of environment, right? And then we have these outcomes, that's a way we would say, wow, this campus does a great job, but their students are not partaking, right? Or their students come very enthusiastic. The input is like, hey, we're here. What do you have for us? And the campus is like, yeah, we're not we're not doing anything.
We've got stuff. It's just might not for you.
Right. Yeah. You actually are going to look at what we do and be like, oh, that is not actually, I feel more alienated there. Right. Yeah. So that's really interesting, that way to break it down into campus responsibility, student responsibility, and then the mix of that is how a student feels a sense of belonging.
Yeah. And to see it as the outcome means it suddenly becomes a goal. It becomes a thing that we're trying to accomplish.
Right. Because one of my hardships with sense of belonging is that it's like, we all have these things. And in fact, I think in higher education, we have a lot of these things where everybody knows what we're talking about, but really no one does. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows, like, oh yeah, sense of belonging, we totally have to have that. Okay, what does that mean? And what does that look like? And then people are like, well, you just know. Like, when you have it, you just, it's just obvious to everybody. And so the reason I'm thinking about from danger to daring is because it gets at what you're calling involvement, which is what is happening with our students that is a block for them taking advantage of what we've created in order for them to be engaged, right? And I really like it because I think it is, I mean, we put a lot of time and energy into engaged campuses, right? All of our activities and how we talk to each other and, your RA and how our faculty are and all of that. But if your students are not showing up in a spirit of connection, you have a really hard time with them. And I know students that I went to school with, I would consider myself this way, where I showed up and I was in my room. You know what danger brain looks like. Danger brain is this piece of, we talk about it in terms of your amygdala, whose main job is to make sure that there's no danger around. And protect you, and is constantly giving you these signals of, do you fit here or do you not fit here, right? You were just saying, like, you had so it's so helpful to make this a concrete experience. You had this experience recently in Danger Brain.
Well, I was thinking about it because you had sort of sent something about the topic to me. And I was like, man, when is the last time I had Danger Brain?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you walk into a new building and you don't know where the exit is or something, and you're looking around, but it's just temporary. The last example, and it was actually a couple of weeks ago, is I got called for jury duty. So, like you get the little piece of paper and it says, here's the date and here's the time and here's the location, but call the night before. And you call the night before and they're like, yes, trial's on, show up tomorrow morning. And I totally resonated with this concept of Danger Brain because I went into the, oh no, what should I wear? What do I want to communicate with what I wear? Okay, so I know where I need to be. So I got to figure out where to park. What do I bring? Do I bring lunch? How long are we going to be there? Like I knew nothing. And it was fascinating to be in a space where I knew nothing. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know really my role. I didn't know, like, I know, show up at 9:00. And so as soon as you sort of show up, and I think I told you this, I mean, I showed up to the building and there's this line in the parking lot. And I'm like, is that my line? And so I'm looking around for any signal to tell me what to do. And I saw somebody else with the same jury summons I had. So I'm like, okay, that's my line.
I'm in the right place.
Around for signs, and there's a big sign on the door saying no cell phone. And I'm like, I can't bring my cell phone. That's crazy. And then underneath it is the, you can only use it if the administrator tells you can. Okay, I can keep it. And then somebody else came out and they made an announcement that you cannot bring any weapons into the building or pocket knives or mace or whatever. And then a bunch of people left the line and then came back. And so like this is totally how you know you're
dangerous.
You're watching every sign, every symbol. How close is my outfit to other people's? Like I was just laughing because you sent the article on what does Danger Brain look like.
Yeah.
And every one of these sort of hit me on that day. But I was also thinking about the fact that I am an older adult. I know how to handle Danger Brain. So you kind of take a deep breath and you go, okay, what do I need to look for? This and I know I'm not in danger at jury duty.
Right.
This isn't the rest of my life. This isn't grades. This is, $18 for the day.
But it is the reason we talk about the amygdala as the reptile brain is because it is from before logic. Right? It is the part of us that looks around and says, if there's anything different about you, if you don't fit in, if your community rejects you for any sort of reason, then you are in danger. And so when we talk about the symptoms of Danger Brain in students, heightened awareness of differences, risk aversion, inauthentic behavior, and transactional mindset. Like I am just here to try to not stick out, to try to not make mistakes.
I could not get selected for the jury, but I also don't want to be pulled aside by the security as I'm trying to check in. I just want to blend in with the crowd. Tell me where to sit. Tell me where to go. Give me clear instructions. I'm not going to actually ask a question. I'm just going to follow. That total Danger Brain, right?
And I think about our students, so let's apply that to general population, which is, in this case, anybody who gets called for jury duty is going to have some, uncomfortableness and uncertainty and looking for risk and those sorts of things.
Oh yeah.
But so that would be true for our average college population. But then if you have anything about you that highlights you are different. In my case, I'm from New York and I'm going to school with people from Texas. But it could be that you're first generation. It could be that you're an ethnic minority. It could be that you're an international student. Anything that you can find that is going to take your Danger Brain and amplify the imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Which is like, not only am I in danger here, but if they find out who I really am, that danger is ×2.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's what I was thinking about jury duty. I mean, I've never been arrested. I'm not a criminal. I'm not like there's all these things that tell me I'm safe.
Right.
I don't have a history of this. I don't know the prosecutor. I don't know the police. I don't know any of so like I was getting all the signals that tell me that I'm safe. I'm just a regular like citizen who's following along. But there is a part where you're sort of looking around going, wow, could you imagine how hard this would be if I had any of those characteristics? What if I can't, like even sitting in the jury box when they were doing selection, and, if the prosecutor turns and you can't hear her.
Yeah.
Like that would totally, like she asked a question of the jury pool and you don't know what she just asked.
Yeah.
So like there were all these moments where I was reminded of things that could trigger something for a student in that environment that I am lucky enough not to have those fears.
Yeah.
For me being out of work for a day, it's not that big of a hardship, but there were definitely people in there it was a hardship for. So yeah.
So I like defining that for our students because I think it can give us, first of all, the language to say, I'm always giving myself a thumbs up. The language to say the reason this student is not involved is because they are in a place where they are sensing it is dangerous to become involved. They're going to be unmasked. They're going to be embarrassed. They're going to be ostracized, right? They're going to be on the outside. Yeah. And so when your student is staying in their room, that is not about they love to be by themselves most of the time. Maybe sometimes it is, right? But most of the time that is, I am safer in my room because I don't have to go out and sort of navigate these transactions with my community when I don't have confidence in my ability to be able to do that. And Sherry, I think it gives us really good language to talk to our students. I just think about conversations in our U100 classes where we're like, hey, danger brain is a real thing. It's there to protect you. But if you can turn it to what we say is connection brain, where now all of a sudden you are super interested in everything around you, right? Yes. I always say it is what my connection brain daughter does when we go to the grocery store in our town. And that is, she is looking at everyone's faces. She just wants to see everyone. And I'm like, don't look around, right? Like, just keep your head down if you don't know these people. And she'll be like, Mom, that's so-and-so's aunt. Oh, look, that's our next door neighbor's blah, blah. That's so, that place where her brain is, which is like, let me see who my friends are here. Let me see who I know and who I could talk to and what I could mention to them. That's where we want to get our students moved to, because then they actually can be involved because they're curious about what's going on, right?
And I love this concept of curiosity because I've been reading about it and I think it's so powerful, and it is what I turn to in those situations is like, what can I be curious about? And I've been reading, the Workplace Curiosity Manifesto.
Ooh,
Stefan von Huydonk is his last name. I love that. But one of the things he talks about that I think is right on and goes parallel with what you've been talking about is he talks about stress being one of the biggest barriers to curiosity.
Yes.
So not only can curiosity turn things, stress can do the opposite. And I think he even talks about stress tolerance and how, some people are really good with stress. One of my friends says she loves to dance on the skinny branches. And her sister loves to hug the trunk, like some people have really great stress. That's Joanna Blower, by the way, who's like,
oh yeah.
But I think there's some truth to that of, okay, let's talk about what stress is, what it does, and then connect it with that danger brain. And then if you can start figuring out not only the connections, the openness, but the curiosity, you can start getting yourself out of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. We talk about curiosity and creativity, same thing. Stress just annihilates both of those. And I'm always talking about manager brain, which is where my brain goes when I'm in stress, which is the opposite of connection, which is I cannot see or think about anyone around me because I am so like in my head about all the things I have to do. And I think I've said to you before, like my daughter will come over and just put her hand on my arm and be like, Mom. And I'm like, oh, hi, where have you been? She's like, I've been here the whole time. But you're so in this like stressful place that you can't be present, which means you can't be looking for connections and you can't be curious and you can't be creative because all you're doing is spinning in your mind about all of the stuff that you have to do. So it's funny, Sherry, because I am hearing a lot more about this idea of transactions with our students. And I think it is coming from them being in a place of danger brain and stress where they are literally thinking about engagements with faculty or with RDs or with advisors as a transaction that they are trying to manage to do correctly. So like jury duty is a great example of that, right? You're not looking around to make friends. You're like, I'm just trying to make sure I'm in the right line and I don't have weapons and I don't say the wrong thing and whatever. And you could come out of that as a total transaction. These things happened.
Yeah.
And I think we have to start having conversations with our students about this is a transformational relationship where you and I were talking the other day, my connections will become your connections.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really powerful in your life. We're not just talking about marching through your day and trying to get back to your, dorm room unscathed, which I think sometimes is what students do.
Which is exactly what I did at jury duty.
yeah. I'm just trying to survive this, right?
But I also knew it was a 2-day assignment or
Right.
a 5-day assignment. It wasn't heading into, 4 years of college. I thank you for saying that because I think that is such an important part of that conversation to say you can march through your 4 years unscathed. You for sure could do it. But at the end of that, all you're going to have is 4 years of blurriness because all you were doing is trying just to manage. But when you show up as a freshman on your first day, this is the beginning of laying the groundwork for 4 years of connection and transformation. Yeah. And I was saying this earlier today, like that is a discipline for our students. That is, it's a discipline for me. It is really, really hard to be like, Rachel, I know you don't want to do this thing. I know you feel anxious about it, but I need you to show up and engage and be curious because it's going to set you up to be successful in relationships and connections moving forward. Right. Yeah.
I do want to talk about our belonging cues. I have a really great story for you about belonging cues that's going to help everyone remember how to send belonging cues to our students. So there are 3 of them. We've talked about them before, but I think as a tool to change our students' brains from danger to connection, these are the 3 things that you do. So the first one is that you are going to expend energy around your student. The second one is that you are going to show individualization. I see you, you're a unique person. The third one is that you're future oriented. Yeah. So when I was on my first day of my master's program, I was sitting in a gigantic classroom with levels and I was in danger brain. So I went to the very top row where there was no one sitting and I sat by myself and I had my coffee mug and I was sitting up there by myself.
Yeah.
And my friend, now friend Faith, I didn't know her at the time, came in the classroom and looked around the classroom and marched up all of the steps and came and sat next to me. So that is energy. Right? Yeah. That girl, instead of just sitting where she could sit, she decided I'm going to come up and sit next to you, which I was very annoyed with her about because I'm in danger brain. Like, what is wrong with you? But her energy is like, I see you and I'm going to come and be near you. Right?
Yeah.
And then she says to me, I love your coffee mug. I love coffee. How do you drink it? Which is individualization. She's like, I see a thing about you and we can have a conversation about it. And I still am in danger brain. Like, who are you? And why are you talking to me? I'm so confused.
Yeah.
And then she says to me, Sherry, when is your birthday? Let me put it in your calendar so we'll be able to celebrate it, which is future orientation, right? Nice. I'm not going away. I did not just march up these stairs and come talk to you about coffee. We are friends now. I know your birthday and we are going to be celebrating it. It is such a great picture of how we can say to our students, I'm coming to be near you. Yes. I see you for who you are and how you're showing up. And this is not going to change. when you come to my office next week, when I meet your parents at graduation, we're going to have this context of our relationship, and we're going to do a lot of really good work in that together. And I just love that as a tool for our practitioners.
Yeah.
Have those students who are caught in stress and danger to be able to say, here's how we're going to move you to, hey, you and we are in this together now. And what's nice is when you do that, your amygdala is like, oh my gosh, now Sherry's my person. So I'm going to like pay attention to her, and I'm going to be close to her, and I'm going to be a great friend to her because we've created this connection, brain, right? Not so fun. She's still one of my best friends to this day.
I love that. Do you know what's so funny to me is we, as many, had a reorg lately, and I got 2 new people onto my team. And I did these 3 and I didn't even know it.
Nice. You're a natural.
I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited that you're part of our team. I can't wait to learn more about what the kind of stuff that you're working on. One of the things I want to make sure that we do is figure out what you want to learn next so we can help you get there.
Yeah.
And let's start doing this. And undivided attention and energy, listening, conversations, and future planning.
And I don't know about you, but I really like to have quantifiable steps I can take with students because some people like you do that naturally, right? That you're just like, I just know how I can connect with people. But I can't tell you how many times I get questions from, especially on the academic side of the house, what am I supposed to do, right? Like I hear you telling me that I'm supposed to move these students from danger brain to connection brain. What do I do? And I'm like, these 3 things. And this is what it looks like.
Right? Yeah. And it's lovely. Do you know the first time I heard you say this, I don't know why, but I flipped the energy around because I often work with students. And what I tell students is that they should follow their own energy. When they get excited about something, that's something to follow. And so I don't know why it took me 3 or 4 times of you saying this to realize that energy is what I bring to them. So that was a good learning this week, even though I should have learned it a month ago.
Well, it is so interesting because it is I mean, there's something in that where we're making space to connect, right? That I am moving towards you. Yeah. And it could be interpreted as dangerous. It could be interpreted as, I mean, to be honest, when Faith marches up the stairs to come and sit with me, I'm like, what the heck is about to happen?
If somebody had done that to me in jury duty, I'd have been like, you're
scaring me. So we for sure have to put them in conjunction with those other 2 things, which is like, don't be scared, don't be afraid. I'm on your side and we're connected now. I think that's so good.
I love that.
So if we think about sense of belonging as the energy, as you're saying, that a student takes to engage with what the campus has created, right? It's this involvement piece. And then the outcome of that is sense of belonging. Yeah. And then we say, sometimes our students aren't going to be able to do that because they're in danger brain. And the way we're going to move them to a brain of connection is exert energy, individualization, and future orientation. Yeah. What I'm very excited about, and I think I'm talking about this in a different way than I have before, is this idea of psychological sense of safety, which is this idea that our students all of a sudden can take risks. They can be really honest about who they are. They are able to show up in their full self because they feel like this is a space where we can have real conversations. Yeah. And Sherry, you and I talked about this the other day, and I just want to be careful about the difference between a safe space, which has a very particular meaning, I think, especially in higher education, and a space where our students can be daring. And I think those things are a little bit different, right? That it's not just it's safe here and we can just all I don't know how to describe the difference there, but it is not just that the space is safe. It is that it is an opportunity for you to be brave, for you to show up and be daring with your full self, and that we have a connection brain between us. That is a healthy thing for you to do. And the nice thing about that is psychological sense of safety is the way that you grow, right? It's the way you take risks. It's the way that you show vulnerability and have that accepted and honored, and the way that you have conflict, and you and I say, even though we have conflict, I still like you anyway, right? I still want to spend time with you. So this idea of moving from danger to daring, I think, is such an important idea for us as practitioners to wrestle with. Does that make sense?
It does, and it reminds me of some of the Brene Brown work, where she talks about if you're really focused on fitting in, then that means you're actually hiding.
Right.
And therefore you actually feel more lonely. Right. And so you have to be daring to really sort of not fit in, and to know that where your value comes is you, not the fitting in part of it. So I think there's a really interesting thing there. I also think another interesting thing in that Impact of Sense of Belonging book was they talked about sort of the intersectionality of belonging. So it means you can't just have a safe space for veterans like you talked about earlier, because somebody's sense of belonging isn't just veterans. It's that it's veterans, and I have these experiences, and I'm female, and maybe I'm Latino. Like it's the combo of things. And sense of belonging has to incorporate a lot more than just the one single identity. I also like what you said about daring. One of the things I think is, for a sense of psychological safety and daring, it has to be a safe place to fail.
Right. Yeah, that's
so sometimes we're going to screw up. We're going to screw up the sense of belonging. We're going to screw up the identity. We're going to screw up stuff, and we're going to repair it, and we're going to get through it.
Yeah. And that is so much about community, right? Because the way that we actually feel close to people is we present our vulnerabilities. They respond to those vulnerabilities, and then we move on from there. And it's not this guarded self. It's that I'm actually saying, yes, I'm going to, and it might make you angry, and you might not like it. And you might be like, that was wrong. You shouldn't have done that. Right. There are going to be those things in there, but the idea that we can be in community together and hold each other accountable for mistakes that we make, or risks that we take, or failures that we have, that is actually how people feel connected. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were asking me about AI and how to use it on a campus. And they were asking specifically around chatting with AI, like, hey, so if you feel stupid asking a question to a real person, can you chat with AI? And I was like, okay, maybe, yes, I think that's probably a good use of it. Okay. But also, the way that we have close connections on our campus is, I come to you and I say, Sherry, I know this is a stupid question, but whatever it is. And you say, Rachel, that's not a stupid question. People ask that question all the time. It's a great question. Here's the answer to it. And then in that moment, because I risk vulnerability and you responded in a generous, kind way, now we have a better relationship, right? And I don't want to outsource that to say it's safe for you to ask AI all these questions, perhaps, but it is not the same thing as risking that vulnerability with someone else.
No. And plus, if you use AI for that, you actually take away the opportunities for other people to be generous.
Right. Which you need to learn. I mean, that's the whole thing about connection brain, is like, if I can be daring enough to show up and say, I have a stupid question, and you can be like, hey, I'm really happy to be in the space with you and be generous to you about that, our relationship has changed.
Yeah. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer the question or to show up for you. Right. Yeah. Both sides.
So I think there's a lot of conversation to be had about how we move students from danger to daring. And I think there's a lot of steps in there, but I don't think that we can, I just think the space for students to be daring and, like you said, make mistakes and take risks and ask questions in their most authentic self is the transformational power of higher education. And I think we have to do a better job of teaching that, because I don't think that it's it comes naturally for a lot of people.
And I think you brought it up earlier, teaching it on both sides. How do we teach it to the students so they recognize it, they know what it is? How do we teach it to all the people that are going to interact? Frankly, students too, so that they can communicate those belonging cues to make it easier for everybody.
So I think, I love ending with action items. My action item out of this, I think, is really simple, maybe deceptively simple. And that is, I think, just to introduce Danger Brain, Connected Brain, and Daring on your campus so that, like you just said, all of your constituents understand that language and understand how we move people to that place of vulnerability and connection. I think you could transform a culture just by teaching that language and just helping people understand how valuable it is. So that's all you have to do.
And making it and normalizing it. That this is not a deficit that people come with. This is a normal reaction that in many situations is the appropriate one.
Super helpful.
So let's normalize it. Everybody's feeling this way, whether they look it or not.
Yeah.
I look really calm in jury duty.
No one would know that you're like, do I fit here? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I look calm.
It's so good. I think it's a great theme for the year. I think we'll have continued conversations about it as we think about it more and think of more applications. So thank you for coming. It's always fun for me to say, here's an idea. Let's talk about it. So I appreciate your wisdom.
Got me thinking in all sorts of great ways. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Good to spend time with you. You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Bye.